The government should have a detailed planning about human resources for the future, should have a very detailed view by speciality, by region, how this is going to be evolving the next couple of years. They took 1 year to produce the report, not 2 months. After they produced the report, instead of analyzing the report, they moved the change of this, instead of something to be a target, becomes an ongoing basis. So now it's something that is on an ongoing watch. What does it mean, ongoing watch, in government's words? We don't care about it anymore. We tick the box in the memorandum, it's over. Okay? I don't see anything moving on it. Then we have certain things peculiar to the Portuguese situation. We had, before the NHS, occupational-based health insurance, including one for the government workers. That's things that existed, those insurance arrangements that exist prior to the NHS are called subsystems, but they should have been dismantled somehow. They never were. And the ones in the public sector, in the memorandum, I said they need to be removed out of the public budget. Either they become self-sustainable, either they become commercial insurance, either they are just extinguished. They were supposed to present a plan for their evolution to the summer of 2012. So far, we are still waiting for that plan. And there seems to be quite uncertain about what they want to do. This will be important because it will face resistance for all civil servants of the country, plus their families, which makes probably close to 1 million people in high positions. So that's something that remains to be done. Tax system adjustments. You could deduct private health expenditure against your taxes. That was removed for the higher brackets income, and they was reduced for all the other income brackets. They have done it almost immediately. 3 months afterwards, it was done. So this was easy to do. Public-private interface. This is things that government buys from the private sector. So lab tests, X-rays, imaging in general, and how they were working with them. So they just decided here to lower the prices they were paying. So it was tough. Well, it was not even tough bargaining. They just announced the private sector, you're going to pay less 10% this year and less 10% next year, and basically the private sector accommodated it. So it was quickly done. Now they will say that it was going to be yearly revisions of this. Later on in the memorandum, they moved it to every 2 years. But it's because the government has been able to impose the price revisions. So what can we say about impacts of this? Well, this is my own view, as you could expect. From some of these things, I have hard data to try to back up my view there. For other things, I just have more impressive view. I'm not going to tell which is which. That's why we may have time for questions if you want to know. And I don't have time here to go all of them. On the pharmaceutical side, what was the positive impacts that we found? Well, lower spending for both government and patients. That occurred because of price revisions, because of increased use of generics, because lowering the margins in the pharmacies. What is the risk now at the moment? Whether the pharmacies are at risk, whether the network of pharmacies is at risk or not. How much they are adjusting now, how much they will adjust in the future. For one thing is clear, the pharmacies now claim they are with problems, which is probably true, but they cannot expect that the pharmaceutical prices will rise to get them out of trouble. That is not going to happen. So the question is how they will manage to keep on the future. So that's the main risk here. User charges, they increase. What has the positive effect? We see some signs of more adequate use of emergency services. Seems to be happening somehow. The question that we don't know much about is deterrence of usage. Have been people put away from the system or not? And for this, we start to have some information that has not been a major effect, but I still have to work more on it. Management of the NHS and prescription patterns. There seems to be some efficiency gains and more adequate prescription pattern. At least people in institutions, this is soft information, saying that they see some change so in a positive direction, which will be good. But we also had a slight increase in waiting times. But unlike other countries, we had an increase in waiting times, a slight increase in waiting times, because the increase in demand was larger than the increase in activity. It was not because they cut down services. Okay? Now, the curious thing is that the latest number they published is already more than 1 year old, which is always suspicious on these issues. So I put here question mark, what's happening lately? Primary care, there was more access to the GPs, yes, especially with the agreement with doctors, with the doctors' unions, but there is a slow progress. Tax system adjustments, lower government spending, yes. What was the negative part of it? Well, people have to have sustained out-of-pocket payments that will be higher. They cannot rebate them against the tax system, so they are paying more. From out-of-pocket, human resources, supposedly we have a better planning of training and deployment of human resources. This is the official version. I should probably put here a yellow sign saying warning label, saying that is government speech, not really mine. I'm not sure about this. I didn't dig into the issue. Public-private interface, sure, lower H&S spending. In the private sector, there is news that some providers are actually leaving the market. Is that good or bad? I cannot tell you, but at least there are signs that some of these companies, especially laboratorial tests, are closing. Health subsystems, well, here I don't have any clue. It depends on the plan and how it is going to be implemented. So what's different to austerity? Actually, these things of linking austerity in health systems and having proposals, it's hard. First of all, I'm not going to give proposals. I don't like to give prescriptions. Okay? If I would like that, I would go to be a physician and write you a prescription every day. I prefer to give you the date and then each one of us thinks what's best. So what's different to austerity? Curious thing about this memorandum of understanding. More than 80% of it, it's a consensus in Portugal, that more than 80% of it was already being written down in several documents for the government over the past 10 to 15 years. You'll go back to several reports that appeared, and all of the things, so 80 to 85% of things were there. They just didn't happen. They just taken back. So what was the austerity thing bringing here? Well, it's not really that many new measures. It was more like a strict timetable to get it done. What is the major austerity risk that we see at the moment? It's actually an inversion of objective functions, which is a dangerous part. How do we start teaching economics 101 to students? We tell them we have preferences, then have a budget constraint. And the budget constraint is important because it does not allow you to get whatever you want, all that you want. But the objective is something, right? The constraint is just constraint. The risk with austerity, and when you look on the official speech, is that we invert things. The budget constraint becomes the objective. And having a stricter budget constraint is different from having budget constraint as an objective. And I think that's a major issue that comes as a risk here. That we concentrate so much on this, that makes difference. Let me just relate to yesterday's talk by David Stuckler. He was mentioning that it was too dangerous to have economists around, basically, right? This was the message. Get rid of the economists, right? Which is fair. I can take that. But I think some of it comes from that, first, we should never forget, as economists, that there is a budget constraint always. Right? That's one first thing. The second thing is that budget constraint is a constraint, not the objective. And so as long as we think about assistance goals, given a budget constraint, I think we are on the safe side and we can contribute to the debate. And I think the main message from this discussion between public health and economics is that we should convince public health people that budget constraint matters, is there, but we should recognize that's not the objective. Okay? But this is a risk, that you see it often in these things. What is different to austerity in Portugal was the financial assistance program. That provided pressure for action and provided credibility for the changes. That's why things moved. But at the same time, there was flexibility when it needed to be having flexibility. And apparently there was, in my view, it was more flexibility in those things that were not in the spotlight of the newspapers. It's easier to be more flexible on the things that are not on the spotlight, because then you don't look weak. So what I would say then is that from Portugal experience, that austerity plus oversight from foreign bodies is actually different from austerity alone. So what are the implications so far? We had changes that were forced by the external oversight that make them credible, which is a good thing. From the government action, what we saw was what depends on laws, publishing laws, was actually done. So getting things moving in terms of formal ground is fine. Now, what was left behind from the list that I was putting there to you is everything that depends on organizations, everything that depends on managing people, convincing health professionals to change. That's where things are delayed or changed during the implementation. And that's probably what will be long-lasting, right? And of course, some of the changes may have just been window dressing, just changing for the troika to see. But actually, if you want to transform the health system, you can't do it at the macro level. You need to go through the organizations to do it, to the way people work. And I think that's where we are lagging behind on this part. The rest of the slides, which you can see, are 22, 15 remaining. I leave them for the discussion part. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have a thread here. Let me. Okay. Let me start with a thank you to the organization and to Felix Loeb. I don't know if I should say thank you or more because it is a threat for me. It's a very, very difficult task today. And apart from that, I was not allowed to present the slides till yesterday. Then, well, I did some mix of pictures, not many slides with content here. Well, let me start with saying that we are not evangelists. So health economics is not a matter of selling health. It's not a matter of truth. It's not a matter of ideology. It's a matter of balancing health with other targets, with other objectives of the system. So that is a difference with other other focus from public health, for instance. So in our genes, the trade-off between different objectives of the society is inside our genes as health economists. And and the health is an important objective, but it's not the only one. Okay? Then economic crisis and health, okay, I'm going to talk about Spain because it's the reality I know. Even though the title of the session is the Southern Europe, okay, not Southern Europe, but Spain. So how can we fight the crisis? Well, let me start with the effects of the crisis on the health. The economic crisis has effects on health of the populations through different processes and mechanisms. And it is very important to distinguish among them because the policies should address to the main points. For instance, through poverty, unemployment, losses of income of families, early childhood situations, etc. That is an old theme of the effects of the economic crisis on health. It is in Spanish, I am sorry about that. It distinguishes between long-term and short-term effects, okay? And between direct and indirect effects. Some of the effects are produced through the distribution of income, through the concentration of the wealth of the population, and some others through two important mechanisms. One is the income and poverty, and the other one is unemployment. Today we had a session previous to this one about the effect of unemployment on health, okay? You change your lifestyles, because of the crisis, and maybe some families are thinking that the future of their children is not